The rope creaked against the cottonwood branch like a prayer wheel in the yund. Jacob Thornton dropped his coffee cup when he saw her, a young Apache girl, maybe 16, suspended 3 feet off the ground in his back pasture. Her dark hair hung like a curtain over her face, but she wasn't dead. Her fingers clawed weakly at the noose around her throat. Jacob ran harder than he had in 20 years, his boots slipping on the frost-covered grass. He reached her just as her struggles were weakening, lifting her body while sawing through the rope with his pocket knife. She collapsed into his arms, gasping, her copper skin mottled with rope burns. That's when he saw it, carved deep into her left shoulder blade, still bleeding. Unforgiven. The letters were precise, deliberate, carved with a blade by someone who wanted the message to last forever. Jacob's hands trembled as he lifted the girl, feeling how light she was, how her ribs showed through her torn deerskin dress. Someone had starved her before they tried to hang her. His ranch sat 20 miles from the nearest town, 40 miles from Fort Apache. The isolation that usually brought him peace now felt like a trap. Whoever had done this might still be watching. They might come back to finish what they'd started. The girl's eyes fluttered open as he carried her toward the house. They were the color of dark honey, filled with a pain that went deeper than rope burns and knife wounds. When she tried to speak, only a rasp emerged from her damaged throat, but her lips formed a single word: por favor. Spanish, not Apache. Jacob's mind raced as he kicked open his front door. A Spanish-speaking Apache girl with Unforgiven carved into her back, left to die on his property. This wasn't random violence. This was a message. The girl grabbed his shirt as he laid her on his kitchen table, her eyes wide with terror. She kept Lou, King toward the windows, as if expecting death to walk through at any moment. Her fear infected him, made his skin crawl with the feeling of being watched. Jacob had lived alone for 8 years, ever since Martha died giving birth to their stillborn son. He'd chosen isolation, built his life around the safety of solitude. But now, staring down at this broken girl who'd literally dropped into his world, he realized his peaceful existence was about to shatter. Outside, a horse whinnied in the distance, too far to be one of his own. Jacob grabbed his rifle and peered through the curtains. 3 riders sat motionless on the ridge overlooking his ranch, their silhouettes black against the morning sky. They'd been watching, waiting to see what he'd do with their message. The girl, he still didn't know her name, tried to sit up when she saw his weapon. She shook her head frantically, pointing toward the door, then at herself. She wanted him to give her back, to let them finish what they'd started. "No," Jacob said firmly, though his voice shook. "Whatever you did, whatever they think you did, nobody deserves this." But even as he said it, doubt gnawed at him. The word carved into her flesh, unforgiven. What crime earned that kind of permanent judgment? Murder? Betrayal? He studied her face, searching for signs of cruelty or deception, but saw only exhaustion and terror. The riders began moving down the ridge. Jacob's nearest neighbor, Old Pete, lived 12 miles east. He could load the girl in his wagon, drive her to town, let Sheriff Williams sort it out. The smart thing, the safe thing. But the girl would never survive the journey in her condition, and those riders would intercept them long before they reached help. Or he could stand his ground. Protect a stranger whose story he didn't know, whose past might justify the violence carved into her skin. Risk everything. For someone who might be exactly what her tormentors claimed she was. The girl reached up and touched his face with trembling fingers. Her lips moved, and this time sound emerged, barely a whisper, but clear enough. "Gracias por no dejarme." Thank you for not leaving me. That decided it. Jacob loaded his Winchester, checked his Colt, and barricaded the doors. If those riders wanted to finish their business, they'd have to go through him. He'd made his choice the moment he cut her down from that tree. There was no backing away now. The sound of approaching hoofbeats grew louder. 3 sets, moving at a deliberate pace. They weren't in a hurry. They knew he had nowhere to run. Jacob positioned himself at the front window, rifle ready. The girl crawled off the table and huddled in the corner, making herself as small as possible. She knew what was coming, had probably seen it before. Outside, a voice called out, "Thornton, we know you got her in there. Send out the Apache witch, and we'll let you live to see another sunrise." The voice belonged to Coleman Rivers. Jacob recognized the Texas drawl from their few encounters in town. Rivers ran cattle on the land south of Fort Apache, had a reputation for settling disputes with bullets rather than words. Behind him rode his two sons, both as mean-spirited as their father. "She murdered my nephew in cold blood," Rivers shouted. "Cut his throat while he slept. That marking on her back is justice, Thornton. Frontier justice." Jacob glanced at the girl huddled in the corner. Murder. The word hit him like a physical blow. Had he risked everything to protect a killer? The girl met his eyes and shook her head slowly, tears cutting tracks through the dirt on her cheeks. "I ain't giving up anyone without proof, Rivers," Jacob called back. "You want her, you'll have to take her." Rivers's laugh was cold as winter wind. "Proof! She was covered in Billy's blood when we found her. What more proof you need?" The girl struggled to her feet, stumbled to Jacob's side. Her damaged voice was barely audible. "No, es verdad. Not true." But doubt was a poison spreading through Jacob's veins. What if Rivers was right? What if he'd saved a murderer? The smart move would be to step aside, let frontier justice take its course. But looking at her, this broken, starving girl who could barely stand, he couldn't believe she'd killed anyone. "Your choice, Thornton," Rivers yelled. "Hand her over, or we burn you out." Through the window, Jacob saw one of Rivers' sons dismount and begin gathering dried brush. They meant it. They'd torch his house with both of them inside rather than ride away empty-handed. The girl grabbed Jacob's arm, whispered something in Spanish he didn't catch. Then she pointed to herself and shook her head. Pointed to a young man's scalp hanging from Rivers' saddle, fresh, bloody, with hair the color of wheat. Billy's scalp, his nephew's hair. But the girl was pointing at it and shaking her head, not claiming it as a trophy, denying it. She was trying to tell him something about that scalp, something important. Jacob squinted at the gruesome trophy. The hair was too light, too fine. Billy Rivers had been a full-grown man of 25, with coarse brown hair like his uncle's. The scalp hanging from Rivers' saddle belonged to someone younger, someone with hair like a child. The pieces clicked into place just as Rivers struck a match. "Wait!" Jacob shouted through the window. "The scalp on your saddle. That ain't from a grown man." Rivers' hand froze, the lit match halfway to the kindling. "What you talking about, Thornton?" "Look at it, Rivers. That hair's too fine, too light. Your nephew Billy had thick brown hair. I seen him in town. Whoever that scalp came from, it wasn't him." A long silence stretched between the house and the mounted men. Jacob watched. Rivers examined the bloody trophy with growing uncertainty. Behind him, the girl whispered urgently in Spanish, then switched to broken English. "Niño, little boy. They kill Niño. Blame me." The match burned down to Rivers' fingers. He cursed and dropped it, but the kindling didn't catch. His voice, when it came again, carried less conviction. "She could have killed Billy and taken the boy, too." "Or," Jacob called back, "someone else killed them both and left her to take the blame." The girl reached into the torn remnants of her dress and pulled out something small and shiny, a silver locket, tarnished but intact. She opened it with trembling fingers, revealing a tiny photograph inside. A young Mexican woman holding a small boy with fair hair. "Mi hermano," she whispered, "my brother." The boy in the photograph had the same fine, wheat-colored hair as the scalp hanging from Rivers' saddle. Jacob's blood turned to ice water. They hadn't just tried to hang an innocent girl. They had hanged the sister of one of their victims. "Rivers!" Jacob shouted. "She didn't kill your nephew. She was trying to save her little brother. Someone else did the killing, and you helped them cover it up." For the first time, doubt crept into Rivers' voice. That's impossible. We found her with Billy's blood on her hands." The girl struggled to form words around her damaged throat. "I find them dead. Try to help Hermano. Too late. Blood on hands from holding him." She'd arrived too late to save either victim. Found her murdered brother and tried to help, getting Billy's blood on her hands in the process. When Rivers and his sons had arrived, they'd seen exactly what the real killer wanted them to see. A blood-covered Apache girl beside two dead bodies. Jacob felt sick. They'd nearly participated in a double murder. First the girl's brother, then the girl herself. "Think about it, Rivers," Jacob called out. "Who else knew where to find Billy? Who else would want both him and the boy dead?" The realization hit Rivers like a thunderbolt. Jacob could see it in the way the rancher's shoulders sagged, the way his grip loosened on his rifle. Someone had played them all, used their prejudices and assumptions to nearly complete the perfect crime. "Jesus Christ," Rivers breathed. It was Mackenzie. Had to be. He's been wanting Billy's water rights for months, Been sniffing around the boys' family too, asking questions about their land claims. Thomas Mackenzie, the territorial land commissioner with a reputation for acquiring property through creative interpretations of law and deed. If Billy Rivers had refused to sell his water rights, and if the Mexican family had legitimate claims to land Mackenzie wanted, Rivers dismounted slowly, approaching the house with his hands visible. "Thornton, we made a terrible mistake. That girl in there, she ain't the killer. She's another victim." Jacob opened the door cautiously, still holding his rifle. The girl, Maria, she'd whispered her name was Maria, stood beside him on unsteady legs. When she saw Rivers up close, her eyes filled with something Jacob hadn't expected. Not hatred, but profound sadness. Rivers removed his hat, his weathered face twisted with shame. "Miss, there ain't words for what we nearly done. Mackenzie, he told us you'd murdered Billy in cold blood, showed us the blood on your dress as proof. We never considered." Maria nodded slowly. In halting English, she said, "You love, nephew. I understand. Someone use love, make weapon." Her forgiveness hit Rivers harder than any accusation could have. The tough rancher's eyes filled with tears as he untied her brother's scalp from his saddle and gently placed it in her hands. "This belongs with you for proper burial." Over the following weeks, the truth emerged in full. Mackenzie had ambushed Billy Rivers at the Mexican family's homestead, killed the boy when he'd tried to intervene, then carved Unforgiven into Maria's back when she'd arrived searching for her missing brother. He'd strung her up and ridden straight to Rivers with a story about Apache raiders, knowing Rivers would form a posse and finish his dirty work. But Mackenzie hadn't counted on Jacob Thornton's stubborn decency, or on Maria's quiet strength. When the territorial marshal arrested him, evidence of a dozen similar land grabs came to light. The Unforgiven, carved into Maria's flesh, became the key that unlocked his entire criminal empire. Maria stayed at Jacob's ranch through the winter, recovering from her wounds and helping him repair years of bachelor neglect. Her laughter gradually returned, filling the empty spaces in his house that had echoed with loneliness for too long. When spring came, she had a choice: return to her remaining family in Mexico, or stay in the territory that had tried to destroy her. She chose to stay. Years later, when their own children played in the cottonwood's shade, Jacob would remember that first morning, how close he'd come to choosing safety over justice. The tree where he'd found her still bore rope scars on its bark, a reminder that mercy and courage were often the same thing. And sometimes, in the golden light of evening, he'd catch Maria touching the faded scars on her shoulder blade, not with shame, but with something like pride. She'd transformed her tormentor's brand of Unforgiven into her own declaration of survival. The mark remained, but its meaning had changed forever. That's the end of today's story. If you found it interesting, leave a like and subscribe so you won't miss what's coming next.